Once upon a time, I had a podcast that lasted nearly 100 episodes. It was called Nintenbros, and it was with my brother. It revolved around collecting, completing, comparing, and rating games. It was a lot of fun. I do miss it, but it was a chapter that taught me a lot, and I'm here to share with you what it was and the lessons I learned from it. So let's dive right in. It started as a COVID cast. That's kind of what I like to coin those terms nowadays when podcasts start during COVID. It started September 22nd, 2020, and it started as an outlet to talk and have conversations with people about games. Originally, it was just me and my brother. Our goal was to have guests on and talk about upcoming games that we've played with other people. We never did really get to have a bunch of guests on. We had maybe one or two. I feel like we had two guests on, but I can only remember one. One time we also had a developer send us a game early that they wanted us to review. I don't know how much legitimacy this developer was, but I remember playing through the game and thinking, man, this game is so terrible. Now we have to review it. But there were some interesting times when we had the podcast, and I do miss just the rigidness that we needed to get the podcast out each week. And now we don't have to team up and get together and do that anymore. And it's a little sad, but that's how life goes. You go through life ebbing and flowing, and sometimes you're working on a project with someone, and sometimes you're working on a solo project. And you can't get too hung up about what the past was. You just have to take the lessons that you learned from the past. So it was a way to conversate with people and honestly keep my boredom at bay during COVID because everything was shut down. And, well, you lived through COVID. You know what it was like. We started it because all we knew was we enjoyed Nintendo games and we enjoyed talking about them, and we just wanted to have a creative outlet for it. We truthfully never had a bunch of people listening. I think most of our episodes got 10 downloads, if that, and I think our most viewed episode got like 30-ish. I remember we would have like 4 different types of episodes. We would have what we called our bread and butter, and that was a terrible way of advertising it, but it was just us talking about what we were playing for the week, what we got that week for our collection, and fun facts about Nintendo. That was what we called our bread and butter. We had in-depth game reviews, which was my personal favorite, where every month we played through a video game, and then at the end of the month we would rate that game and give it a score and talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and all that fun stuff. We also had a week where we would put 2 games up against each other and fight for which one was better. So we'd have like Super Smash Bros. Melee versus Kirby's Air Ride, and one of us would fight for one, and we would just try to convince the other that the other one was better. And sometimes those are cool episodes, and other times those were not very cool episodes because, well, it's hard to convince like Super Monkey Ball is better than Super Smash Bros. Melee. There was one other kind of episode. I do forget what it was though, but we had like a rotation of 4. The one time that I do remember having a guest on or being a guest was with a podcast called Nintenvania. I remember we were on Instagram and they reached out to us over there and they were like, hey, let's do a collaboration. Let's record this time. And it was tough because they were like on the other side of the world or other side of the country, and their times were completely different than ours. And all I remember was I had to wake up in the middle of the night to shoot a podcast with these people, and I was totally for it. I was like, absolutely. This is the way that legit podcasters go. They make sacrifices like this, and I had so much fun recording our first collaboration that it didn't matter that I slept from 9 to 1, woke up at 1 in the morning to record a podcast for 2 hours, and then slept from like 3 to 6. I was like, that's fine. I'll do it. And my little brother at the time was still in school, and even though it was COVID times, there was still online schooling, so my mom was pressing him about going to bed. But I'm pretty sure my brother was like, oh, it's almost over. It's just like a business podcast I'm doing. And it's just funny to think how much weight we did actually hold this podcast to. Like, we did really, really try to get this podcast to grow, and it never really did. And that's a little sad, but we tried doing the social media. We made a bunch of Instagram reels. We made TikToks, and it was fun having to come up with creative outlets, both me and my brother. And some of them were duds where they got like 0 views. And then other times, like my brother would come up with something so awesome and it'd get thousands and thousands of views, but no traction on our podcast. Like our podcast, TikTok would sometimes do really well, but our podcast would never get those TikTok views converted. And it was a struggle to continue having dedication and motivation to upload weekly. But having a podcast that lasted almost 100 episodes, last time I checked, I went through the file, I saved all of them before we had to take it down, because it does cost money to keep podcasts like posted somewhere. So once we stopped doing them a few months later, I was like, I don't really want to keep this posted on Spotify if we're not adding to it. So I saved all of the episodes, put them in a folder, and I want to like burn it to like a CD disc and just have all of the Nintenbros episodes somewhere. But last time I checked, it was like 93 episodes. And sometimes we did end up doing like 0.5 episodes, like episodes that were a little shorter than usual, because we wanted to get 2 episodes out each week. And so we would do our main one and then the 0.5 one. So we could have gotten 100. I didn't really count how many 0.5 ones we had, but we could have gotten 100. My favorite part of Nintenbros, aside from having something to work on with my brother, was definitely the in-depth game review. The in-depth game review was when we had to play through a game each month, and I have so many memories of it getting down to like the last couple days, and my brother's like, yeah, I got to speed run this game now, or I got to stay up really late and get it done. And there were so many times that I was stressing out. I would try to really make it so I'd play the game evenly throughout the month, and my brother would be like, yeah, I'd get to it the last week. And it was fun because we'd stress out. We knew that we had a deadline to reach, but we'd both get to it. And it was fun to come together and talk about a game that we just both recently beat. And those were definitely my favorite episodes. Some games we did were Mario and Luigi Dream Team, Super Mario 64. I'm pretty sure we did a Pokemon game, but the only Pokemon game that's coming to my mind is the Mystery Dungeon ones, which, by the way, Pokemon Mystery Dungeons are slept on. They are so good. I remember us doing a Legend of Zelda one. That was the first time I ever beat a Legend of Zelda game. And it just gave me a reason to play video games. And it felt good because sometimes, especially as I got older and was no longer a kid, I felt guilty playing video games. But when I knew that I had to do it for my creative outlet, I was like, okay, I'll give myself permission to play video games. And it felt better. That was definitely my favorite part. But why did it end? It ended because we kind of grew out of it. My early 20s, I was definitely gung-ho about, let's keep collecting video games. Let's build up our collection. And I have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of video games. It is kind of ridiculous. As I look over and see my collection, I see complete inbox consoles. I see complete inbox games, dozens of GameCube games, dozens of 3DS, dozens of DS, dozens of Wii. Like, I have so many games that I have not touched in forever. And I just have them because it was my hobby from like age 21 to, I want to say 24, 25. I think it was 24. And I don't regret having that hobby. I do regret not putting my money somewhere else, like the extra, because I still did have extra money throughout the week, but I think I should have been smarter with it. But it's cool. When I have people over and I show them my bookcase of collection, they're always like, wow, that is pretty cool. I don't regret building up the collection. It does still bring me joy looking over there and seeing all the games that I could play if I ever get bored and want to do something. But in life, you go through phases, and Nintenbros was a phase. It was a fun phase, but I was losing motivation to just play video games at the time, and so was my brother, and we kind of felt like frauds having a Nintenbros podcast when we would talk about what games we were playing, and all we were playing was either chess for me, or my brother would be playing like Clash of Clans. So we didn't feel like we were the best people for a Nintenbros podcast, and we ultimately decided to stop because we wanted our efforts to go somewhere else. But I do miss having something to create with him, and I do miss the rigidness and having a schedule of needing something to go up each and every week. It was fun. It taught me that you can have all this dedication and the growth will be so slow, but if you're dedicated to the process is what feels good, and the growth will eventually come. Like, I'm confident that if we kept going with Nintenbros for years and years, there's no way we wouldn't have hit something. We were already gaining a little bit of traction, going from 0 to 5 downloads to, like, we were getting honestly mostly 10, but some of our videos were getting up to 20 and a few were at like 30. So we were definitely getting somewhere, but it just shows that you need a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and a lot of grit. And I'm here for it. I like the long game. I think it's fun. So that's my story of the podcast. I do still have all the episodes, so maybe if you're lucky, I can drop one day and see what you guys think. But it was fun, and I want to create another podcast. I got something brewing. So thanks for listening. If you guys are thinking about creating a podcast, just go for it. Never hesitate. This has been Gen Z Daddy. I'm out of here.